Little Girl in the Basement Part 1. This all started about 4 years ago when I was 15. The first experience I had with the ghost in my basement was when I was sitting on my computer when no one else was home. The television had been turned off, so it was just a black screen. Out of the corner of my eye and in the black of the TV screen, I saw a white figure next to the couch that seemed to be moving towards me. Thinking it was my brother, I turned around to tell him something, but no one was there. Freaked out, I ran upstairs into my room and waited until my family got home to come out. At first, I was the only one who was experiencing any paranormal activity. I would hear a little girl say, "Who are you?" when I was in the basement, or I would hear footsteps and see shadows. Since my dad and I are huge fans of ghost adventures, my parents just said I was getting too wrapped up in the show and trying to create my own experiences. However, a few months later, after I had stopped mentioning these experiences to my parents, my dad started to hear things too. One night when he was home alone, he threw the laundry basket down the stairs when it was pitch black dark and heard a little girl say, "What was that?" He also began to hear screams, his name being called, and a little girl repeatedly asking who he was. This was the extent of the activity for the next 3 years, and it wasn't until this past year, 4 years after the activity first started, that the activity began to escalate. This past summer, my cousins had spent the night and we were sitting in my room talking. I began to tell them about the weird things that I had heard in the basement when all of a sudden there was an extremely loud bang in the wall. My cousins and I bolted out of my room screaming and freaking out. A few months later, I was watching Ghost Adventures with my dad in our living room. The door to the basement is in the kitchen, which is next to the living room, so you can hear what's going on by the staircase from the living room. No one was home except me, my dad, and my dog. Out of nowhere my dog started barking like crazy and growling at the basement door. We then began to hear footsteps near the top of the staircase. My dad went downstairs to check it out, but he didn't see anything. This began to happen more frequently and made me more determined to find the ghost in my basement and made the spirit more determined to get my attention. A few weeks after that incident, this guy I am seeing, Sean, was over at my house and was playing a video game with my brother in the basement. After the game was over, they came upstairs and came to sit on the couch. Sitting there, we heard a loud noise, as if something had fallen in the basement. Being that my brother and Sean were too afraid to go downstairs to see what it was, I went down there myself to see what it was that had made the noise. Aside from the fact that the lights were all on, even though they had shut them off when they came upstairs, there was a box lying in the middle of the floor. Where the box had been originally, it would have been impossible for it to fall on its own. Freaked out, I put the box back and called out to see if anyone was down there. With no response, I went back upstairs and proceeded to make fun of the both of them for being too scared to go down there. 2 nights later, I was watching a movie with Sean in the basement when my dad let my dog outside. Sean asked if my dad had let the dog in the basement because he heard running behind him. Even though I was a little scared, I just continued watching the movie and pretending like nothing had happened. Soon, we started talking, and as he was talking to me, he kept looking behind me with a freaked-out expression and seemed pretty on edge. Knowing that he is not only really afraid of, but also doesn't like talking about, the paranormal, I began to get really nervous. So, I jumped off of the couch and asked him what he was looking at. In the midst of my questions, I stopped mid-sentence after noticing a flesh-colored figure dart across the room out of the corner of my eye. I didn't even have to say one word before both of us ran upstairs. A few weeks later, I was sitting in the basement alone when I heard a little girl laugh in the pantry area. Not wanting to run away from it, I again called out to see who was down there but got no response. Figuring whatever it was had left, I went in the shower. Suddenly, I heard a little girl humming right outside the bathroom door. I turned off the water and waited for it to start again. When it didn't, I turned back on the water, but just as I had turned it on, the humming started again. At first I thought it may have been the pipes for the hot water, but in all the years that I had used that shower, it never made that noise. Also, it sounded distinctly like a little girl either singing softly or humming. However, when I asked who was down there, I didn't get any response. Since it is difficult to hear or see spirits without any devices, I plan on buying a lot of ghost hunting equipment and trying to record and capture whatever is in the basement. However, almost everyone I tell this plan to says it's a bad idea as it may anger the spirits and cause a darker energy to come in.